This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle. How are you tonight? A little stormy here in the Northeast today, but May is gone. Welcome to June. We hit the 100 days, I think a couple days ago, 100 days until the first games are played of the college football season in 2022. And what will we talk about until we get there? Well, hopefully you'll bring your topics tonight. I want you to feel free to do that, especially these coming weeks. Tonight we got an interesting show. We're going to have Mac McGrath on from the Mac and Jack show. And he's going to talk about a radical plan that he has to fundamentally change college football as we know it. We'll talk about that. We'll get your comments and feedback. I think it's a bit out there, but we'll let Mac speak for himself, obviously. It'll rattle your cages. I can promise you that. So be prepared. We'll bring Mac in just a couple of minutes. We'll also talk some more Nick and Jimbo. We'll talk some quarterback situations around the college football landscape. And who knows what else we can come up with. You guys and your topics will keep this show rolling. As always, I want to thank, as we're live right now on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Twitter. We'll be plausibly live. The show will be replayed tomorrow on Roku at noontime, as always. And get those Roku devices downloaded. We're growing. Our downloads are growing exponentially there, and it's really, really good to see. And the growth on Northeast Streaming Sports and TGI Sports Talk itself has been tremendous as well, and we have you to thank for that. So continue to like, share, and follow the shows and get on Roku, as we said. And we'll have all of you in with your topics. Good evening, Rick Sherlock. Good to have you in tonight. I'm sure you'll have some comments on what Max got to share tonight. Alan, you as well. So we have the SEC. We have the Big 12 representative. And Alan will be here for the whole show. We're good to see that. We're happy to see that. And Rick says Mac has no problem speaking for himself when Jack lets him get a word in. And so Mac's on his own tonight. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm sure Mac can carry his own water tonight. And I think without further ado, so we can get him in, hear what he's got to say, because it's going to be very interesting. So be prepared. I think to use Mac's words, to have your mind blown. With that, good evening, Mac McGrath. How are you today?
Good evening, Keith. How you doing today, buddy?
I am doing fabulous. I've been thinking about this ever since you kind of sprung it on me here a week or so ago. And, you gave me some of the brief overview and then sent me some more detail. And it's funny because I happened to watch the rest of your show as you told me to do that day. And it was interesting. I probably found myself landing more on the Jim Jeffcoat's side there, but again, there's some merit here. I want to get the plan from you, and maybe we can start with why you see the plan to or see the need to go to this radical change.
I really don't think it's that radical. I mean, what's happened with college football right now, right? So the NCAA, whether we like it or not, runs the college football country. It was set up a long time ago by Teddy Roosevelt. It's a government body that runs college football, period, whether we like it or not. Right. Unless something happens where the government, gets rid of it, that's what it is. So we all know the problems the NCAA has had over the years, and we all know how bad they've run college football. And part of this is their fault, but that's for we could talk about that for hours. So I want to bring it to today, right? I think that when the NIL came out, and you'll see a lot of stories coming out, and we talked about this months ago, Keith, about the
I
NIL.
talked about here ad nauseum, so I know what you mean. Yeah.
And at first we say, well, yeah, that's right. The players should get, if the NCAA is promoting the NCAA using players' name, image, and likes, they should be getting money for it. I mean, that sounds right. But me, you, and Jim Jeffcoat were probably the loudest say, whoa, wait a minute. Before we agree and think this is a great thing, let's think about what happens next. And we were right. And we'll get to that in a second. The portal comes in. And the portal on its base is great to me, right? I mean, you have coaches that recruit players and leave. And the reason why the players are going there mainly is maybe because of that coach. Or maybe they recruit these players and say, well, you'll be starting, we get all these pro players that come, and they find themselves second or third string behind for whatever reason. And they say, okay, you can go one time, you can go to another team if you like.
By the way.
On the basis, to me, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Now you put those two together, and now recruiting comes in. And with the Supreme Court striking down the NCAA, it took the teeth out of the NCAA. So the NCAA right now is scared. What do I do? What rules should I make? Am I going to get sued again? And if you think about it, there's a couple things that are coming around the corner, right? We have the big boosters, the big businesses are offering these guys, come here and we'll give you endorsements you couldn't get nowhere else. And if you think the next logical two steps here, Keith, if you think ahead like I do, and I think you do too, the next two things that are going to happen is going to be unionization, because they are no longer amateurs. They are now professionals. They can have agents, and certain players are going to get certain things. So you're going to have a union get involved in here offering competitive pay, insurance, health benefits. And then the next step will be contracts, believe it or not. And you heard one of the head coaches talk about that today.
Uh-huh.
How do you stop it? There's really no plausible way that the NCAA can do that. You got schools forming their own conferences. The NCAA right now has lost its kind of grip it had before. So how do you stop that?
Well, they can't. Before you go on, they certainly aren't going to police it themselves, because they've left it up to the schools to police themselves, and we see what's happening. And we see the nightmare that's become. Yes.
So there you go. So what can the NCAA do? Well, it can file for a certain thing that professional sports did, right? It can file with the government for a non-exempt, or an exempt form, where they can establish a draft. And if you think about it, right now, what's going to happen is the schools with the biggest purses or the biggest backers are going to get the best players more than they ever have. So if you establish a draft, because the college football amateurism is done. It's all done. You can't put it back. It's done. It's been ruled on. And you have a draft. Now all of a sudden the NCAA, if they handle that right, they don't have to worry about the big boosters anymore. They don't have to worry about the big business. That's all up to the agents. That's all up to the schools. All they got to do is establish a draft. So you get teams that were ranked 30 through 1. Of course, the rankings aren't perfect, but 30 through 1. You give them Division 1A, of course, and you let them have 6 rounds. After those 6 rounds up, you move down to the next 30 teams. You give them 6 rounds. And the player doesn't have to enter the first 6 rounds if he doesn't want to. He can wait to the second 6 rounds of the draft if he wants to. And also, what they also can do is they can use the draft to trade drafts just like the NFL. So suppose let's throw Arch Manning in there. I think Purdue was 30th last year. Purdue drafts Arch Manning. Arch Manning will make a lot of money no matter what school he goes to. Now, remember, this is only for kids that are there on athletic, especially football and basketball scholarships. That's the reason they're there. They're only there because they want to go to the NBA or to the NFL. So if Georgia wants Arch Manning, the agent wants Arch Manning to go to Georgia, Georgia compensates Purdue just like they do in the NFL. So if you want Arch Manning, I want your first and second round pick this year and your first round pick next year. So here we got the NCAA is kind of in charge. This is all they got to do. They don't have to do anything else. Just make sure they do this. And now
go ahead.
You have a fair system. So the portal, which is free agency, really, you could also use, you give the player, either he has to stay in place for 1 or 2 years that he's drafted by. And then if the team wants him to go to another team, say Arch Manning waits after a year Purdue, and he decides that he wants to go to Georgia and Georgia wants him. Well, if Georgia is going to offer Arch Manning a contract, him and his agent, then they got to reimburse Purdue. Basically what you're doing is you are giving the players what they want. You are now making it more fair for all schools. And I don't see why this would not work. Okay.
Well, first, I have to comment. You brought up the perfect example because Arch Manning, if Purdue had the first draft pick, we know his grandfather, Archie, would be in there getting him manipulated to go wherever he wanted him to go. He's already done that with both of his sons. So I'm sure he could do that for his grandson. I mean, I can see why you come to this point. But, I mean, where I'm at right now with this whole NIL thing is that it's gotten out of control, and these guys have, and I think you're trying to correct this, right? I have the ability pretty much to be a free agent, and kids are now, you're renegotiating their NIL deals. You know, there's a kid at Miami going to play in basketball that has threatened a school that he'll go into the portal if they don't give him more NIL money because he's getting better offers elsewhere. So I get the because we're on the same page when it comes to that stuff. But I don't like taking, and maybe we're heading that way anyway, as you said, I don't like taking the total student athlete out of the equation. If I want to go to Stanford or Duke, you're telling me I can't go there. Well, maybe I could, because if I'm a good enough student, I can go where I want. Basically, you're saying.
Right. So let me give you the answer to that. So a student says, well, I don't want to be part of the draft. He has every right to do that, right? He can be a walk-in just like an NFL. Mm-hmm. But and he can walk into a college, and if he's there on a scholarship, say for education or music or whatever he wants to do, and he can maintain that B average, then there's no reason why he can't walk on and play with that university, right? But if the college is trying to backdoor him in and is helping him in any way or fidgeting the numbers in any way, that school will not only be suspended, but will also suffer draft choice losses.
But who's going to police that, Mac? I mean, we have rules about those things now, and obviously this is where a lot of academic scandals. I'm sorry, sports scandals come into play with academics. So what would
this is where the NCAA will make its money. This is where they will do this. All they got to do is worry about this. Now, they ain't going to worry about haircuts. They ain't got to worry about – they don't even have to worry about boosters anymore. Get all the boosters you want. Do whatever you want to do. Who cares anymore? Right now, Keith, we have lost amateurism. And let's not forget, not only are they going to get, the endorsements and be able to play at these universities, you've got to figure in the tuition. If you go to Alabama outside, you pay $30,000 a year. That's a year. So $120,000 for 4 years, right? To to get the housing there, another 18 point something thousand dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So you can throw another 80,000 on. So to go to Georgia, to go to Alabama, on a 4-year scholarship, free of charge, you're talking almost $200,000, Keith. So that's part of the contract. I mean, that's in there. You got to figure that's costs. That is also what they're making. It's probably more to go to, say, I would imagine Alabama than Purdue, right? Purdue is probably a little cheaper than Alabama. So that's got to be figured in with the cost also. What I'm saying, Keith, is if you want fairness, this is what would have to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard the biggest argument I've heard is minor leagues, right? Minor leagues. And there's a couple problems with that. One, they are already their own minor league. They are the minor league. What college football player is going to go into a minor league when they can go directly into the NFL as either drafted or undrafted as a walk-on? Second,
under either system, yours or the existing one, they're going to make more in college than they make in the USFL.
Thank you. Secondly, a minor league in baseball and hockey, they are also traded to other teams for prospects and players. So, I mean, it's the same. I laugh when I hear that as far as when it comes to at least basketball and football, Keith. And all I'm saying, Keith, is this is already gone. We cannot think of college football the way we used to. It's done. The only way that this could be resolved is to put a college draft in place by the NCAA.
I'm not so sure that a strong administrative unit, take the NCAA out of play, because I agree they're a useless organization. They've done nothing. They institute, even if they put rules in, they don't police them.
They're scared.
They wait until the FBI or some outside organization gets involved, and then they do what they have to do. I mean, this obviously is radical. I know you don't think it's radical, but it is radical. It will definitely hurt the lower ranked leagues. It's going to help the Power 5 teams. I mean, heck, of the top 30, I got to believe off the top of my head, 27 or 26 or 27 of them probably were from Power 5 conferences, right?
Right.
Maybe that's a little high. But if I'm not going to get any picks to the lower rounds, Deion Sanders got the number one cornerback in the nation to go to Jackson State this year. He's not going to get a shot at that kid in your system.
Exactly. Well, listen, there's a portal, right? You got the portal. So the portal after 1 year or 2 years, whatever the mandatory staying would be because of that draft, Deion Sanders can go get him, right? Go get him. And if he wants to make all that money, he can go play for Deion Sanders and I'm trying to remember what school he represents. Is it Arizona? I'm trying to remember what school.
Jackson State.
Jackson State. So he goes. So now he can go play for Jackson State. And all the Jackson State has to do is compensate the other team, just like they do in the NFL, Keith. All I'm saying is this is the only way I can see to keep it as fair as possible without the bigger teams just getting bigger. And the teams you're talking about that are going to be affected are not going to have a chance at competing with these bigger teams anymore. Cincinnati's all done, Keith. They're all done.
Wow.
I'm just saying there's no more Cincinnati's. There's going to be no more these teams that have a chance. Oregon, man, they should. But I'm just saying that compared to the rankings of last year, this is where you get it. And you get reimbursed. Just like the NFL, just like the NBA. I mean, they right now, they're professional. This is what they are. And I mean, I don't, there's no way of going back. There's no way of stopping a union from going in there. You can't stop a union. And there's no way really to stop them from signing contracts now. This is the only way that maybe you could get some kind of competition, some kind of play. I mean, even if you go down, say, the last round, Keith, where you're down to 132 in the NFL, and I think it's 152 in the NBA, you're still able to pick up some players, and they still can get some local endorsements. And hey, maybe a team in the, in the top 30 to 60 see him and say, hey, listen, man, that kid's pretty good. We'll talk to, the team at 140 and see if they're willing up to give that kid up. And maybe we give them something. So there is a chance for them to gain some players, not as much as, but that's the way it is anyway, Keith. right? I mean, UConn isn't going to get any big anyway. That's not going to happen.
Well, Jim Moore is a coach there now. They might get, the 1,000th ranked player in the country to go there. Listen, I mean, so we talk about this from the standpoint of the universities and college football as a rule. But what about, are people going to care if you're telling me that and again, we cover up the fact that, yes, it's they're there just as stepping stone to the NFL, a lot of these kids. We know that.
Right.
But we still have really good conference play below the Power 5 level, by the way. There's some good football being played. And you've got bowl games and you've got college football championship series or playoffs to play. Are people going to tune in and watch when there's only, again, maybe you'll tell me there's only 30 teams that got a chance now. And I'll tell you, well, every 5 years you're going to get a chance at a Cincinnati or a UCF. But under your plan here, teams aren't going to be able to rise up the way that they can now, because you cannot build a program if you're going to be drafting behind 30, 60 other teams every single time.
I believe you can, Keith. And I believe the reason why you believe you can, first of all, you're going to get your support at what college, whatever college you're at, whatever conference you're at, you're going to watch your conference, you're going to watch your colleges. That's not going to change, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you like the Big East, you're going to watch the Big East. That's just the way it is. If you like the Atlantic, you're going to watch the Atlantic. The thing that helps them out, as you're talking about the smaller schools, is when you have that one star player or those 2-star players that want to go to, say, a bigger school and get bigger endorsements and maybe get a better shot at the pros. Now at least they get compensated, right? They would get compensated. Right now they don't. So what they do is you take my player. So that may be one of the only players that could lead you to that conference championship and maybe give you a shot at getting in the top 30. You get a couple good players. They can just leave now, right?
Correct.
So if they want to go somewhere, they got to compensate them. So if they want to, if the agent says, okay, we're going to send you to, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has got to compensate them if they want that 1 or 2 players. So maybe they get 4 draft choice. Maybe they get a draft choice from Oklahoma in their first round.
So what if, Jim Jeffcoat went to Arizona State for a reason. I'm sure you had this conversation with him.
Right.
I mean, again, taking the choice away from the kids does not seem like the direction we ought to go in this fight. I mean, again, there's certainly problems with the system that we have today, but taking the choice of where I can go to school totally out of my hands seems to be, again, a bit radical. A way to try to fix the problem. It seems like we're creating not more problems, but we're reaching the end that you're afraid of reaching anyway, and you're just artificially taking us there faster.
Well, Keith, first of all, if you really want to go to this college to learn something, you don't, and it's not to go to play football, which most of what we're talking about is, or it's not to play professional basketball. You still can go through the same process. You still can get a scholarship. You still can be a walk-on. If Jim Jeffcoat wants to go to Arizona State, well, then he could don't go in the draft, right? Get in there, get your scholarship. Listen, the choice, the kids, you can't have it both ways. We call them kids. They're 18, right? They're 18 years old. They can sign agents. They can get endorsements. If there's a draft, they can get drafted and go to war. I mean, I don't know about all this other stuff that these laws are covering, but if they are legally adults, if they do something that gets them in trouble, they're tried as adults. I mean, that's what they are. And we didn't do this. This is something that the kids supposedly want, representative, and they all like this thing. So if you want to be professional, if you want to make $20 million, $10 million while you're in college, more power to you. But why should we let you choose when we don't let kids coming out of college choose where they're going, right? I mean, wouldn't you love to be a national football player and get drafted by the Detroit Lions? And, I don't want to go to Detroit. I'm going to go over and play for the Cowboys. You can't do that, because now what happens is you have taken all the possible parity out of it. All this does, Keith, is take it to its end and start resolving issues before this thing gets so blown out of proportion. We ain't going to know what's going on.
I mean, well, let me talk. I got to circle back, because again, I I keep coming back to academics because even though it's, kind of a ruse in some situations, we know that. But you talk about penalizing people who come into under academic scholarships playing football, right? If they don't meet a certain standard.
Right. If they're trying to beat the system, right.
Yeah, right. But what about the kids who are drafted and do go where they're drafted? They don't have any academic standards to live up to at all. Am I going to class? Am I just there playing football? That's it.
That's the university. That's the university. That's up to them, right, Keith? Why should the college, if you're drafting somebody to play football, you don't care if they're taking underwater basket weaving or whatever to get some kind of degree, right? You don't care about that. You want them there on the football field to make you some money, so your school gets more more promotion. You get more you get more accolades. That's what it's for. Let's be honest. It's not they don't care whether they get it's up to the young man. Let's start calling them young men and young ladies, whether they want to get education or not. Well, that's up to them now. That's up to them and their family and maybe their mom and dad and some counseling. I don't know. But why keep pretending? Why do we keep pretending that this is for when you're going to Georgia, you're going to get as a football player, you're going to get an education? You're not. You're going to
but there are real student athletes out there. And to me, this system just penalizes them.
How?
Totally.
How does it penalize them? Give me an example.
Again, if I'm a good student athlete and I want to go to Alabama,
right? I
want to go to Alabama. I don't want to get drafted by Purdue, or I don't want to get drafted by.
Then don't enter the draft, Keith. Don't enter the draft. Go in there, tell your agent, could work with Alabama, and tell them, listen, I want to get in there and get an education, and I'll be a walk-on. So you don't enter the draft that way. But so you're not telling the player, hey, you have to go in the draft. If you are academically, if you can do it, and Alabama wants you to do it, and that's great. You could be a walk-in just like on the NFL. You don't have to go to any team in the NFL if they draft you. You can say no, right? Yeah, I don't want to go to draft. That's up to me. We got to the power is with the students now and their agents. That's where the power is right now. The universities are just so let them have the power, but they can't choose where they want to go as a young man and not keep it fair. Also, when you have men that are drafted in the NFL, that are drafted in the NBA, that are drafted in the MLB, and that are drafted in the the NHL, and they're men, right? They're men. And they can't decide where they go until they get free agency or whatever.
Well, why wouldn't you just let those kids get drafted into the NFL straight away?
That's up to the NFL, right?
It is. And right now they can't be until after I believe their sophomore class is.
But whose rule is that, Keith?
That's the NFL's rule.
There you go, Keith. That's the NFL's rule.
And that's because these kids are ready to play in the NFL at 18.
Well, again, Keith, that's up to the NFL. What's the NBA's rule, Keith?
1 year.
Is it? Can't you go right in from high school?
You cannot anymore. You have to go to school. You have to either go to school for 1 year or go somewhere else for a year. You can't go straight up.
All right. So they changed that a little bit to make it look better.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's right. It's a farce. One and done
listen, I agree, Keith, but you know something? What you're saying is, we got to treat them like they're 15, 16-year-old kids, and they're not. They're not. They're 18. They're going to
make decisions. Listen, the NBA changed their rule in part because so many of these kids were coming out of high school, and they couldn't manage themselves. It isn't so much they weren't ready to play basketball. They weren't ready for life and all that was thrown at them as far as money and opportunity. And they mismanaged because they can't make decisions at 18 years old that they can make later on.
And you know something? There's some people that can't make financial decisions at 24 and 40.
Well, I was going to say to you that there's scientific studies that say the decision-making part of a person's brain doesn't fully develop till they're 27. In my case, more like 55. So
right. So what we should do is hold the draft off till 27.
no.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. I just look at you and I are certainly on the same page of why we've reached the point of you coming up with this plan. I just don't know that we're totally on the same page. And I see some, as I look at this, I go, there's some validity to what we're talking about here, because a student athlete can still be a student athlete. Right. If he's that good a student, he can go wherever he wants and be a top college star. I get that.
Sure can.
The rest of it, I'm just not so sure the rest of the world is ready to accept. We'll find out. I did ask you this. I don't think you ever answered me, because did you get this copyrighted? Because I've been accused of stealing plans like this before.
Well, I told you, I got a letter ready to go to the NCAA. and let's see if they could get themselves together here, because right now, Keith, it's just ridiculous, right? I mean, there's nothing, there's no rules in place. Nick Saban's mad because there is no rules in place. You got Texas.
Ironic. Listen,
it's great. And Texas A&M is, he's not going to talk to, Saban anymore, because, what he's saying is true and I don't like it. And then, come on, man, this is ridiculous.
Well, he didn't really accuse anybody of doing anything wrong, he says. But
well, he did.
He pretty much said he did.
I heard
all the players, right?
I heard. But it's whatever. But he's right. And there's a lot of people out there that know that this is the end of college football amateurism. It's done, Keith. And that's the hardest thing to accept. Me and you, we're old school, right? We consider people getting the scholarships payment. They don't consider that payment anymore, Keith. They say, well, they're making that school a lot of money. Well, maybe. I don't know if they're making them $300,000 worth of money. Maybe they are, but they don't consider it payment anymore, Keith. The Supreme Court made its ruling. Now they got to deal with it. And this is the only way I think that this could maybe keep parity somewhat together, is run it like a professional draft.
I don't think parity's there. I think if you put this plan into place, the Alabamas and Georgias run wild.
They only get 6 picks, Keith.
I understand, but I can get guys in the portal every year as well.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to compensate them teams.
Yeah,
now you don't have to. So you listen. You want Arch Man? You go down there and you talk to BYU and say, we want Arch Man. They say, well, what are you going to give me, buddy? And that's how it works.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mac. I haven't heard a bet. You know what? I'll give you credit, because we all sit here and complain. And I just say, because I'm old school, I'm like, give me back my football that I like. I want my traditional rivalries, put my conferences back together, make kids stay 4 years. And that's never going to happen. I know that. And I sit here, screaming, get off my lawn. But at least you come up with a plan here. So I have to give you credit for that. And I think, I want you to follow through on this. I hope you do, because I want to see how it comes out.
Well, listen, I don't like it, but I don't see no other way, Keith, to compensate schools, especially with the portal, especially in recruiting. I mean, I don't know how you compensate the smaller schools, and this is the only way you could do it, is by actually running it like an NFL draft. That's the only thing I can come up with. I don't know any other way.
Well, it merits some consideration. If it won't work in its entirety, I think there is some stuff here that the NCAA or whoever runs college football, because regardless of what happens, there's going to be drastic changes here in the next 5 years. I mean, the Power 5 conferences have talked about breaking away and playing under their own flag of the college football playoff division, or whatever they want to call themselves. The SEC, we've talked about it many times on your show. They're going to build up a super conference and pick off the Ohio States and Penn States and Michigans and have 40 schools and become their own,
right.
League.
So now you have this draft, and it doesn't matter if they do that or not, does it? Do whatever you want, because in the end, it's going to be the top 30 ranking that makes, or the top, the rankings of the NCAA that matters.
Well, I want you to get this plan into the NCAA, because I want to see your name on the list of candidates to replace Mike Emmert, who can't be gone soon enough. And the candidates, you can't do worse than the candidates they put up there. So I don't know if it's a ringing endorsement.
That's kind of a backhanded compliment there, Keith, but thank you anyway.
Listen, thanks for coming in and sharing this with us tonight. We'll talk more about it, I'm sure, as we go down the road and we get closer to some actual football. And this is going to be very interesting to watch
What happens
and see where you can go with this. Because, again, the NCAA is going to change radically. And might as well be your plan considered as well as any other.
All right, Keith, you have a great night. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming in, Mac. Bye-bye. So that's Mac McGrath from the Mac and Jack Show. As I promised you, it would be radical. I'm surprised you guys didn't have a few more comments on Mac's plan. I'm sure you will as we go along. And I'll be referring to this as we talk about the problems in college football. I'm not necessarily totally in agreement with Mac, as I said, because I think it's really, getting us to the end of the road of where we're heading already. And maybe he's right. Maybe we should just speed up the process. If it's inevitable, that's where we're going. I pray to God we're not. I mean, that's just, where we're at. So that was kind of an interesting. I did want to get into this because Max sprung it on me a couple of Sundays ago and talked about it on his show after I'd done my little spot on Sunday morning. And it was a very interesting premise. He did bring me, he's got himself a little outline of how he thinks it should work, which I'm sure he'll expand on. And I do hope he gets it copyrighted because I don't want to be doing a show someday and I got some guy I'll have Mac like that guy on YouTube, you guys all remember, who was going to take me to court and sue me when I was talking about the 16-team playoff, which only like 1,000 other people have ever talked about. But this guy wrote a book on it nobody read. His mom might have read it. But this is much more in depth than that certainly was. So thanks to Mac McGrath for that. And who knows what'll happen. Let's see. Alan's got a comment here. I got pictures in a second, Rick. I didn't see it. What they need to do is get a group of people that can do the playoff rankings better. They need to expand the playoff rankings is what they need to do. Again, Alan, I mean, 4 teams is impossible, to be fair. Somebody's always going to be left out. There is the ability to have more teams. I don't care whether I'd like to see 16 because I'd like to see all the conferences represented. But I don't care. You make it 8. Whatever. It's the big conferences that are fighting this. The SEC is fighting a tooth and nail, and Notre Dame, they don't want it. Notre Dame's got a 1-4 shot every single time this year. But now, if Notre Dame probably doesn't care if it goes to 16. They'd still get a 1-5 shot. But anyway, what's the rest of your comment here? Make teams be accountable for losing instead of dropping them a spot or two because of how good they look on paper. Well, I don't disagree with that. And I guess it's a good thing Mac's gone because Rick likes Mac and Jack. But that was pure nonsense. Now, don't put Jack's name on it because I really don't remember where Jack stood on this. I think he was with him. Mostly. I don't know if you're watching that day, Rick, but it's good fun. And listen, I have to give Mac credit for one thing because I sit here and I rail about everything wrong with college sports every week. I don't have a plan to fix it except go back to what we had, and I don't see that's probably going to happen, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, gosh. Guys, we'll talk about this if you want to anymore. By the way, Rick, you should like this plan. Because that if Georgia would actually the plan, Arch Manning will go where he wants to go. But Arch Manning could definitely end up in Georgia if he were to be drafted by Georgia. He'd have to go there. But the top teams aren't going to have the top picks. So Mac, that part I don't know. I'm kind of all over the board here, but to me, you can't take a kid's choice away from them. In that regard. So we'll see. I don't know. Fun though. And again, I give Mac credit for coming up with this. He's really laid it out pretty well. And I'm sure that, when he sends his letter to the NCAA, his manifesto, as it were, he'll hopefully they'll get some kind of response from it. So it'll be fun. Listen, guys, I want to play a real quick commercial for the the Dream Ride Experience to raise money for the Homefront, Foundation. They raised lots of money in the last bunch of years, over $18 million total, $3 million last year. Northeast Streaming Sports, a huge sponsor of this event. Please watch this for 30 seconds, and I'll be right back, and we'll jump into some more college football news. Be back with you in a second.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride Experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
All right, some really good stuff there. And again, I do plan to consider. I got to check the schedule with my event, my social secretary. But there's a possibility we'll take a ride that Saturday and go down and check this event out. Not that far away. I think it's about an hour and a half, maybe. So maybe we'll get some of our people together and we'll take a ride that day. Who knows? Who knows? All right, guys. Bit of news for Rick Sherlock. Just a reminder, I'll be playing with our one of our regulars who's not with us tonight. Doesn't appear, or if he is, he's been quiet. Kenny Gifford and two others in a scramble at Rolling Hills. I get to see Joe the Pro Morendo for the first time. I usually see him during football season. And we'll play for a scramble for Loopy's Tavern, scholarship in her late son's name. Good tournament, a lot of fun, and it's for a good cause, as always. What else we want to talk about? Not sure what Friday's topics will be. I don't think Carlos is going to be able to make it in Friday. He'll be traveling to Nashville, and I don't really have an opportunity to record the show before, so I'll be flying solo, so I'm going to be counting on you guys to help me with some topics and give me something. I'll be on the other side of the argument so we can debate. Maybe I'll send a link that day and invite people in to debate the topic they bring up real quick. We'll talk about that more and see what you guys think. So let's see. We got some more comments about this before I move on. If the Power 5 teams break off into their own league, it'll be a terrible deal for college as a whole. I agree. Listen, Alan, everybody who watches me knows that I'm an old fart, and I'm also very old school, and I want things the way they were when do I think the game was better? Not necessarily, but I think the way the game was run was better. When we had the college conferences set up the way we had them, the way we had traditional regional rivalries. College football is a very regional sport with national appeal. People care about regional rivalries. On the East Coast, they care about Nebraska, Oklahoma. They cared about Alabama, Auburn, right? But it's still a regional sport at its heart. And that's being taken away with all this nonsense that we've had with realignment. And, if the SEC continues to try to become a super conference, it's just going to get worse. Is it good for college? No. They keep making money hand over fist because the TV deals keep getting better and better and better. And I don't know why. The games on the field is better for the most part, but the way it's run is worse. Well, that would be a great idea, and maybe revert to, like I said, where we were 2 decades ago. Never going to happen. And that's Mac's point. I get again, he's taking it to a radical, and certainly an extreme level, but he's not wrong in his premise for wanting to do it. That part is dead on. The way we're going, we're heading towards a ruin. And that's the only place, Rick, I know you think the plan is nonsense, and I'm not necessarily a fan of this plan, but where we're heading could be worse. Genie's out of the bottle in college sports, right? And it's hard you can't put the genie back in the bottle. He puts himself back in, I guess. But I don't see that happening here. Changes do need to be made. No, I know. I'm not going to speak for Mac about, the seriousness of his plan. Again, I think I understand what it's born from, though. It's pretty sad. We might be able to do that. Friday, Alan, if you want to come on. I won't be able to get Mancini on, though. You remember, we're on at 8. It's about 5 a.m. out there in California. He's bad enough at 7 a.m. when I get him on Sundays. Just kidding. What else we got here? So message me and we'll talk about that. I don't know if we can do an hour on it. Maybe we can do an hour on the NFC, AFC, or the NFC East, and you tell me, maybe a couple other places where you and I part ways. Because again, I don't want to just bring you on and agree with you, Alan. I want to bring you on and make you cry. I'm like kidding. I'm only kidding. So we'll talk about that. Let's get this banner off of here before Rick's head explodes. Let's take a swing around college football. What's going on right now? Oh, look at Nick Saban. Nick Saban has talked about, he didn't really say anybody did anything wrong when he called out Jimbo Fisher and why my computer won't stay on here. Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. But look at when you pretty much say, yeah, you got the best recruiting class in the country, but you bought them all. And again, that's part of what the problem is. They likely, this is where I get into my debates with Carlos all the time, right? There is something wrong when you can just go buy players. It's not supposed to be part of the recruiting process. Nick Saban says that it is. I'm sure Alabama does the same thing, though. And the problem is there's nobody to police this. And for him to say, I didn't say anybody did anything wrong, then, well, that means that goes against what he says, because he's not necessarily for the NIL. Alabama doesn't need to use NIL money to bring in players. They just don't. Probably Georgia doesn't need it. LSU doesn't need it. Oklahoma doesn't need it. Certainly helps. The whole thing it's just bastardized so badly. Again, I think kids ought to be able to get home to see their dying grandparent, or go to a funeral, or whatever else. Some of the things that teams have been put on probation for, going back through history, are just idiotic. It's funny, and Jimbo will say, Saban says he has no problem with Jimbo at all. I think Jimbo's got a bigger problem with Nick Saban. They have a relationship going back to Jimbo's days as the offensive coordinator at LSU, where they won a national championship. And I believe Kirby Smart was on that staff as well, if I'm not wrong, Rick. And I don't know that Kirby was a big fan of Nick then. And, he's had to coach in his shadow, except for one national championship he won at Florida State. Good for him. But other than that, Jimbo Fisher's teams, in my mind, have underperformed consistently since that national championship. He always seems to recruit well. Good example. Look at USC and all the players they brought in. Yeah, well, you know what? It's here. And there's another thing. So the portal and the NIL, which again Mac alluded to tonight, and I've talked about ad nauseum on this show. Those two through when you put them together, are an evil. Now, I don't have a problem in certain instances with the transfer portal, as I've said consistently on this show. If my coach leaves, I should be able to leave as well. Now, maybe you want to have a rule where he can't go to where his coach went, which is the case with USC, Lincoln Riley, and Caleb Williams. But if your coach doesn't stick around, and because that's the triumvirate, right? You got NIL, you got the portal, and you got coaches able to move and just break any contract that they have. And that's just a recipe for, coaches are lying to players right and left. I mean, look at Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is going into kids' living rooms saying, come see me, you play for me the next 4 years at Jackson State. Guarantee you, even if he doesn't get the job, as I think he will if Mike Norvell doesn't get it together this year, Deion Sanders is looking at the Florida State job. So every kid he goes and talks to, he's basically lying to when he says, come play for me for 4 years at Jackson State. Now, there are coaches that are not doing that because, Nick Saban or the people recruiting for Nick Saban are not lying. He's not going anywhere. But there's only a handful of guys that you can say that about who aren't going to be looking for the next best job. I mean, even the great jobs don't keep coaches there. Who has ever left Notre Dame to go coach another school? I can't think of a great coach that has. Lou Holtz coached South Carolina afterwards, but he had basically retired from Notre Dame, had been out of football, and then went back. That's a little bit different than what Kelly's done this time. So even great jobs don't keep coaches where they are, unless you're Nick Saban. I mean, give me another example of a coach who hasn't at least had his name mentioned with other jobs. Nick Saban's never had his name, maybe with the NFL here and there, but never had his name mentioned with another college job and he's never going to leave. So he might be the one guy who can go into a kid's living room and not be lying to him when he says, I'll be here 4 years. Come play for me. Yeah, I mean, that was the main reason why Texas is getting a lot of media attention. Well, again, there's another school that needs to get it done. We talked a couple of weeks ago, Alan, about which Texas school we thought would win the national championship first, or maybe was even get to a playoff first. Steve Garsazian's in a make or break season here, so that's why they're doing what they're doing. And all of these schools, all of these big name schools, the boosters are involved with the recruiting of players through NIL dollars, and that's the one rule that you're not supposed to break. But we break it every time. That's the one rule that's getting broke everywhere. Weiss. Who? Hello, Carlos, by the way. I didn't say hello to Alan. I think it's settled. I didn't say hello to Dave Guyette. I didn't say hello to... I'm going to butcher your name. Can I just call you Salah? Otherwise, I'll butcher your name. I don't want to. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm glad you're watching with us wherever you're at in the world. You feel free to speak up. Bob Stoops was like that in his tenure at Oklahoma. I think I will give you that one. But Lincoln Riley wasn't above it, right? Obviously. And Venable probably won't be either. There's very few. Charlie Weiss. He didn't leave Notre Dame on his own, by the way, Carlos. He was chased out the door. And do you remember where he coached next? Kansas. Horribly. Charlie Weiss had one good year at Notre Dame, and it all fell apart. And Charlie Weiss did not leave of his own accord. He was chased out the door. He didn't, and again, I'm not saying unsuccessful coaches might not have left. I don't know where, who's the coach? Gary Moeller. I don't know what Gary Moeller did after, actually, I think Gary Moeller went to Akron and coached very successfully, by the way. But I'm talking about legendary, good coach. Listen, Kelly doesn't have a national championship, but he's got a boatload of wins at Notre Dame. So very successful coaches, as I said, have never left Notre Dame before Chip Kelly. Sorry, Brian Kelly. Ara Parsegian didn't. He retired. Frank Leahy didn't. Nuke Rockne certainly didn't. He died in a plane crash. Marion Barber. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. What's this? Kansas fell off with that coach. Kansas fell off before that. Kansas had a couple of good years under Mark Mangini. And then he destroyed the program, by the way. And the administration destroyed the program. They had a really good run. They went to an Orange Bowl. I know they may have won a Big 12 championship, but that was already on its way down. And I don't know, to be honest with you, we're going to take a quick look now. I don't know that Charlie Weis actually even followed him as the coach, to be honest with you. Let's take a quick look and find out, though. I think there was a coach in between. There's the coach now, Kansas. List of college football coach at Kansas. Where are we? Oh, got to go down further. Yeah. So Mark Mangini, who did very, very well, by the way, coached from 2002 to 2009, went 98. Sorry, that's 98 games, right? Wins and losses. 50 and 48, which is really good at Kansas. And he had some really good seasons, by the way. He was a big coach, Big 10 coach of the year, Big 12 coach of the year, sorry. AP National Coach of the Year. Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year. Sporting News College Coach of the Year. A lot of these were 2007. Woody Hayes Trophy. I believe that's the year they went to the Orange Bowl. He resigned following the launch of an investigation into his coaching practices. He was followed by Turner Gill, who really ran the program into the ground in 2 years. Then Charlie Weis came in. And Mark Mangino, by the way, guys, or Carlos, 2007, he goes 12-1, then he goes 8-5, 5-7. He was really in trouble for mistreating kids. And, you know, I get on that not being such a big deal, but some of the things that went on there were really uncalled for. And, so again, Charlie Weis is not, Nuke Rockne, but he didn't run Kansas into the ground. Kansas did that all by themselves. He was an underrated coach for a couple of years. He had Kansas relevant. And the only coach I can think of in my lifetime to have Kansas relevant was Mark Mangino. John DeLon's with us tonight. Speaking of SEC elitists, welcome, John. Good to have you with us. If Charlie Weis and Mark Mangino were about to get into an oil wrestling thing, okay. John, you just paid me back for all the times I've called you an SEC elitist, because I will never now get that picture out of my mind. And I thank you very, very much for that. Yikes. That's very funny, though. 2008, Oklahoma won the title because they blew out Missouri. 2007 season, 2008 Orange Bowl, I'm guessing then, Alan. Yeah, 2007 season, so they played in the Orange Bowl would have been 2008. There you go. Alan and I always seem to be doing this. Did he kick the kicker? What did he do? Let's see what he did. Bet you No Show is talking about Mark Mangino as much as we are right now. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Threw a penalty flag. That's not the one I thought it was. He had chronic alleged misconduct towards his player, became the subject of an internal investigation. He reportedly, matters came to a head after Mangino grabbed linebacker Artist Wright, yelled at him, God forbid, don't do that, and poked him in the chest before a game in Colorado. Not that sounds really bad, does it? I mean, Rick, some of the coaches we know of, certainly, and again, it depends on, it depends on what else is going on, right? If it's all that type of harassment, well, then that's not good. I'm trying to find out. I thought there was a kicker involved myself. He also had trouble with parking tickets and got into a verbal abuse with campus police over parking tickets and whatnot. I do remember there being a kicker involved too, but I just don't see it here in the what I'm reading. So, Mark Mangino, you're welcome for the free publicity tonight on the TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. Yeah, I do remember reading something about that at the time too. He was a bit of a loose cannon. That's right, John. I did know that you own up to it, so that's why I felt okay calling you the SEC elitist. I should make you do an audio recording of T. Bob Herbert's Mark Mangino story. It's hilarious. I'd love it. Is it clean? Can we keep it PG-13? I mean, we can have a couple of, off-color remarks, but we don't want to go with, full-blown F-bombs. But if you can, send it to me and email it to me, John. If you go to the website, I think you'll see my email address, pats09@msn.com. Certainly, I'd love to play it. I think it'd be hilarious. I would love to, I love funny is funny to me. Oh, you were talking about Urban Meyer. Where? Where were you talking about Urban Meyer? I did miss your thing about Marion Barber found dead. Rest in peace. Yes, Marion Barber. Sorry to hear that news. I think you're laughing at me, Carlos. Believe me, Urban Meyer could not go and make Kansas a relevant football program today. All right, send it to me. I'd love to do it. I love funny stuff. Well, there you go. Obviously, he never played for Mike Mongan or Dick Roberti. But here's the difference. I think those people were good human beings who, in trying to get a point across and teach lessons and where they're needed probably for to get through to people, they might have raised their voices, they might have grabbed somebody's shirt, but they were good human beings otherwise, correct? I mean, and correct, maybe I'm wrong with your opinion, but I think I know where you're going with this, Rick. I mean, tough love is okay, but again, if it's only that, right? If it's all verbal abuse and there's no positive reinforcement to go with it, that's where it falls apart. And I understand that. Definitely understand that. At Jacksonville, I think the kicker. Oh, you're talking about. Yeah, I thought. Now I got it. Sorry, Carlos. I didn't know where the Urban Meyer thing came in. I didn't see us switch gears to Urban Meyer. So I think the kicker was the thing that made that. Yeah, I think you're right. Listen, and it's funny because I don't look at Urban Meyer as an imposing figure that you'd be afraid of him laying his hands on you. Yes, Marion Barber was a good player. Played quite a few years in the NFL, as far as I know, and I did not know he had passed. And we send our condolences to his family at this tough time. So very, very sorry to hear that. All right, so we went for a long time on Kansas football history, and what else you guys got for me tonight? I can go a few places, or I can let you guys throw some stuff at me. So let me look back at the news here a little more. And I got a couple topics we can rattle off if you guys don't have anywhere you want to go. I got some stuff in the mailbag here a little bit, which I'll dive into. I'm looking at the news. I don't really see much. I did see the Sugar Bowl was moved from January 1st to New Year's Eve to avoid the NFL games on New Year's Day. And Georgia, speaking of Rick Sherlock's favorite school and one of those SEC teams that I know John DeLon, while he may not root for them, certainly believes are better than anybody else in the country. Kirby Smart is rumored to be looking at a extension from the university. Let's see. I was looking for some information about this. I don't really see any details. Also, offensive coordinator Todd Monken's salary was increased from 1.25 to 2 million. You know, one thing that gets lost sometimes is the money that these assistants, especially the coordinators at the college level are making now. You know, $2 million to be a coordinator in the college is really doing pretty well, right? Smart. So here's Smart. He agreed to a 7-year, $49 million extension in May 2018 that almost doubled his compensation from his original contract. His current average annual pay, is $7 million, which ranks 6th in the SEC. That seems like a crime right there. Nick Saban, of course, number 1 at 10.6. Brian Kelly, 9.5. Jimbo, 9 million. Lane Kiffin, 7.25. You know, I know I defend Lane Kiffin here a lot. Lane Kiffin shouldn't be making more than Kirby Smart. Sorry, I got myself all dried out here going on about Mark Mangino. And Billy Napier at Florida is making more than Smart. So I don't know there's no details in this story about what that's going to look like, that extension, but he's certainly due for a pay raise. He shouldn't be the 6th highest coach in this conference, that's for sure. Jack Hirsch, welcome, Jack. Any hope for the Knicks? Not in college football, Jack. I don't see the Knicks having any chance to compete for a national championship this year. I think they're a little weak on the offensive and defensive lines, and they do need a quarterback. Just kidding. So no hope for the Knicks. We'll talk about that on Friday, but I'm glad to have you in here tonight. Jack Hirsch, you missed your boy Mac earlier. Maybe you were here and quiet. I don't know. So Jack's talking about, yes. So college coordinators making more than many Major League Baseball managers. The top tier managers are making a lot more than that, obviously, but you know, I'm sure Brandon Hyde is not making probably what the top coordinators are making in the NFL, losing game after game with the Orioles. So good point by Jack there. Carlos said he'll be an offensive coordinator for like $70,000. Just don't write me parking tickets. Well, that's not a bad deal. And I don't know that you can fire yourself, though, Carlos. You're liable, you know, to have one of those coaches that you were upset about. I think we're back on Marion Barber. Unfortunately, life spiraled out of control in the recent years, and you always have to wonder what a repeated head. You know, it's a recurring theme and a sad theme when it comes to football players, Rick. We just don't know the toll that they take, and you know, the toll that the blows, as you said, the repeated blows take, and with Jack here, the same thing with boxers, right? And it's a sad thing to watch that happen. Charlie Ward was certainly a good quarterback for the better quarterback for the Florida State Seminoles than he was for the Knicks, but Jack's riding this Knick thing for all it's worth. The Knicks do need a quarterback, Jack. We know that. They need a point guard. So you managed to get Knicks into my college football huddle show. Well done, Jack Hirsch. That's why Mac has trouble bringing you in on Fridays. Kidding you, buddy. You know I love you. Nick's better find out to get relevant. Let's not go down a Nick road today. Don't hijack my whole college football show. Let's get Jen DeLon because, you know, I've only had one SEC elitist on the show tonight, not Rick. So what's John got for us? The entire city of Oxford, Mississippi had to take out a second and third mortgage to pay Kiffin that much money. Lane Kiffin is most likely, here's something to really think about as well, guys. When we're talking about money, and look at, you guys know me, and I always say people are worth whatever somebody's willing to pay them. I don't begrudge people making money. But I would guess, I guess there'd be a couple of exceptions. The great majority of the states in this great union of ours, the highest paid official in the state is the head football coach. Another thing we can debate. Alan wants your spot. Carlos, you better watch out. Who gets the first finals? Knicks or the Thunder? Oh, sorry. Jack, you need to talk to your partner about your his harebrained ideas. We had some fun with Mac earlier. And Jack, if you're still here, I understand where the idea is born from. As I said, we're heading down a bad path, and I don't know how we're going to fix it, but it's going to get us there quicker. That's for damn sure. And Jack says he'll do that. I can't remember, Jack, whether you were on the same. I don't know if you were on the same page as Mac that day or not. I did watch that show. I'd had a couple of adult cocktails that day before I watched that segment after I was on the show. Not that early. This was later in the afternoon. But Jack Hirsch should write about Connecticut, the state or the football program. Listen, let me say this about Connecticut. I think we talked about this last week. Connecticut is I'm pretty sure we talked about this last week. Connecticut is what's the word I'm looking for? It's a warning sign for college football. Connecticut and the demise of the Big East is where college football started to go off the rails. Connecticut had a really good football program, and the Big East was a very representative football conference until the basketball schools decided to go to the ACC, and the football schools were left with nothing. And Connecticut, again, 10 years removed from a festival, now is a laughingstock of the country when it comes to college football. Maybe Jim Moore can come in there and do something. I don't know. But it's a shame, and it's really a warning signal to college football. This was a good football school in the East. I mean, how many good schools are there in the East? Football schools right now. BC, Syracuse, Connecticut, horrendous. Penn State, not really in the East, sort of. I guess we'll call them the East. But I'm not a big James Franklin fan. But Connecticut was a very, very sad story. That team was on the come, with Randy Edsall's first go-around there. And it was just totally derailed by the Big East dissolving back in this first real wave of conference realignment in 2012. Horrendous what happened there. John Lawn, I think Alabama football team could beat the Knicks, and again, that's possible as well. The Knicks are taking it tough on the college football show tonight. Thanks for bringing them up, Jack. Oh, my God. I guess you're on the same page as Mac then. See, my problem, Jack, is, I understand, again, why Mac has come to this point that he thinks we need this radical, fundamental change in college football because of where we're heading. But I say we fix the problems that we have and don't just say, okay, it's inevitable we get to this point. Let's just do it. That's why I can't wrap my head around this in its entirety. Plus, you can't take the choice of where a kid goes to school away from them. And I know there are things within that that Mac has laid out here. That kids who are smart enough and good enough in football would get to go where they wanted and play where they want. Speaking of bad teams, someone predicted a Big Ten title game between Wisconsin and Nebraska. Well, first of all, don't they play in the same division? Hang on a second. Oh, gosh, I got to get to my I don't think that can even possibly be. Well, if they did away with divisions like a lot of the schools are talking about, there wouldn't be a problem, right? Yeah, they play in the same division. I don't know how that can possibly happen. Now, if they do away with it, by the way, it's not going to happen. Nebraska is going to be better this year. They are not going to be even close to being as good as Michigan or Ohio State or Michigan State or even Iowa. Most likely. Maybe they can challenge Iowa for the fourth best record in the conference. Maybe they can challenge for a New Year's Day bowl game. Maybe. They learn how to win games. UConn played Oklahoma in that Fiesta Bowl. That's what I say. Yeah, that was, I think, back in, I want to say 2011, 2012. See how close I am, Alan. Let's see what I can find here. Fiesta Bowl. Get them in the Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia, especially when I can change it if I want. Oh man, they don't get. Oh, that's 22. I want the. Guess I'm not going to find it. I thought I'd find it easy, but I'm not. All I got is 2022. Anyway, it was around 2011, just before the Big East broke up. Yes, UConn basketball is back on the rise, Rick, because the Big East has had a resurgence. UConn left. Remember something when the Big East broke up, UConn did not stay. The only teams that stayed in the Big East in basketball were the Catholic schools that didn't have a football program. UConn still wanted to play football, so they couldn't play with St. John's and they couldn't play with Rutgers. Well, Rutgers was still there, I think. Seton Hall and Villanova. None of them had Division I football. So they went to the American. Didn't do well. Couldn't recruit when their kids were going to go out and play in the Midwest most of the time. But UConn got better, and the Big East basketball got better when UConn returned there. So, and a great job, too, by Danny Hurley as well. No way was it the worst idea because all of high schools are not saying. No way. That's the worst. Okay. I need some punctuation here, Carlos. See, when I read it, it looks like you say, no way, that's the worst idea. I need some punctuation. No way, comma. Look at me, the Perth grad who can't pronounce anybody's name commenting on somebody's punctuation. Yeah, I'm not for the idea, and I don't, yeah. We're not getting good reception here, back and check. That's okay. Rangers are getting ready to start. Great rendition. Ranger games tonight? Oh, man. All right. We know what we're doing the rest of the. No, Rangers were last night, weren't they? Wasn't game. I don't have any idea what day it is. Are we actually kicking off game one tonight of the conference final? 2011 Fiesta Bowl. I'm not too bad. The memory is not totally gone. And I believe the Big East broke off the next year. UConn had to go off to the American, and that was the end or the beginning of the end. Nice. Rangers scored less than 2 minutes in. Thanks for the hockey update. Usually I get that from Carlos, or he gives me the Mets updates, I guess. So I know what we'll be doing immediately after this show. My wife will be very unhappy when I take the remote away from her and put the Ranger game on, unless I stay up here in my office. 2012 was Stanford and Oklahoma State. Listen, the Fiesta Bowl, boy, I remember when it came into being when I was a younger man in the 70s, and it quickly grew into a very prominent bowl. And they would get, long before they were part of the whole rotation during the BCS era and now the championship playoff era, college football playoff era. They were all, before they were in the rotation for championship games, that was a really good bowl game. And I believe, one of the first made-for-TV matchups for college football championships was the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State against Miami. I think it was might have been Joe Paterno's first national championship. Then Yvette Testaverde threw about 12 interceptions in that game. Well, Jack, I can tell you, you guys have really hijacked my college football show here tonight, but I will tell you I'm rooting for the Rangers here, obviously. The Lightning will be a tough out, though, and we'll be talking about that all weekend. And we'll have, by the way, Jim Beringer on Sunday on the Stream of Consciousness show to get us up to date on everywhere we are. Everywhere we are, whatever that means. The year that many felt the Cowboys should have been in the national title game. There's a couple of seasons where Oklahoma State has been close, but no cigar. This was another one this past year, right? I mean, we're never going to know. They needed to beat Baylor, but if they beat Baylor last year, I'm still convinced that the powers that be would have totally screwed Cincinnati and put Oklahoma State in the college football playoff last year. I think we'll just keep going with your comments here, guys. The TV deck is off the table tonight. The deck TVs. Yeah. I'm definitely not going to be outside tonight by the fire pit. That's for sure. That's not in the cards tonight. LSU would have massacred Oklahoma State in 2011. John's still with us, so we get the SEC. I can't remember the LSU team in 2011, John. It would have been interesting. I'm sure they played Alabama in that title game, no? And please tell me it wasn't a 6-3 game that I think I just woke up from just now. Any update on Saban versus Fisher? Yes, we talked a little bit about it, Jack. Saban has claimed that he really didn't mean to, say anybody did anything wrong when he said Texas A&M had bought their entire recruiting class, which I'm not sure how he can make that claim and then still stand by his feeling that the NIL is bad. And one thing he can't do with the NIL is recruit. We all know that. So we know he was saying they did something wrong. So I don't know how he can back away from that now. He says he has nothing against Jimbo. It'd be interesting. How about a grudge match with Jimbo and Nick Saban at midfield before the Texas A&M Alabama game? I know Jimbo's younger. I wouldn't rule Nick Saban finding a way to get scrappy and win that battle. I don't know. They lost 21-0 to Bama. That was okay. So that was the year they lost to Alabama. I mean, didn't they play them like 2 years in a row or two times in 3 years or something, John? In that same time frame, didn't they lose Gosh, maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it was a SEC championship game. I seem to remember a national championship game with those two teams. It was like 6-3. All right. Shoot some more stuff at me, guys, because we didn't get into anything I wanted to except Mac's story tonight. Let me see what else I got here. I'm going to go let me see if I can bring up something quick from the mailbag that might there's more NIL stuff. Who the hell wants to talk about that? How would you rank the G5 conferences as far as football goes? Bama and Texas do play this year for sure. That'll be an interest. Listen, well, Nick Saban's had his way with his former assistants until Kirby kind of broke the jinx this year, right? For the most part. I don't give Texas a whole lot of hope. I think Alabama, listen, Nick Saban, again, I will say this again. I know you guys are, even the SEC elitists will probably hate me. Nick Saban is the greatest football coach in the history of college football. What he did last year with a subpar Alabama team, that was not one of his best teams. He had a great quarterback and a couple of receivers and not a whole lot else. Yes, better than most teams, I get it. But Alabama, from an Alabama level, well below what their better teams have been. And he damn well came damn close to winning a national championship. Everyone who makes money wants to talk NIL. Ain't nobody paying me NIL money. My picture's everywhere. I can get paid a nickel. John DeLon, it's a total lie. Jimbo and Nick hate each other from their LSU. Well, yes, you're talking about Saban's comment. Yeah, I understand. I think the hate goes both ways. I think the hate more, and again, I said this earlier, John, maybe I'm wrong because, again, you guys are closer to the situation down there in the South. But and also, when they were at LSU, I'm sure you have some stories, which you're talking about here. I've talked to multiple players from those teams who said that Jimbo and Nick got into screaming matches all the time. Which, here's a good question, and I don't disagree with you at all. I don't think they have any love lost for each other. What offensive coordinator has Nick Saban not gotten a shouting match with, though? I mean, let's remember that a little bit. Jack, yes. It's probably blasphemy, even with Alabama people, I suppose. But I think Nick Saban is the greatest college basketball coach. I coach basketball, he'd probably be the greatest college basketball coach. I think he's the greatest college basketball. Did it again. Getting tired. Greatest college football coach of all time. The game's so much different. There's so many better teams today than Bears teams had. And that's to take nothing away from Bear Bryant. It's just that the game is different. The players are different. The competition is better. And I think what Nick Saban has done since he's been at Alabama has been historic. Georgia and Oklahoma play next year. You got it all, Alan. Cincinnati plays Arkansas. Oh, my gosh. Hold on. I'm not sure whether you put that up sarcastically, Carlos, or not. I'm going to laugh. Yankees postponed. Yeah, WNBA. Yeah, sorry. I don't want to be sexist, right? I just can't get into it too that much. I'm excited for life. Oh, my God. It's got to be about time to go, right? Come on, Jack. Give me something else smart. Oh, my God. I was going to talk a little about scheduling and whether some of the new TV contracts would improve it. We'll get into that in the coming weeks for sure. I can get to maybe one or two more comments here anyway. Jack. Jack, did you play for Bear Bryant? I think Jack was an assistant coach before Bear got to. He played for him at Kentucky before he got to Alabama. All right, Jen, you got one more, and I'm going to wrap this baby up tonight, I think. If you're talking to an older Bama fan and they've had a few adult beverages and you think Nick is better than a bear, you should probably keep it to yourself. Listen, my fighting days are over, John. So unfortunately, my mouth still works the way it did when I was 25, but the rest of me doesn't. It works like I'm 62. So you're probably right. Boomer Sooners, it's going to be fun. You know what? We're less than 100 days, guys. We're less than 100 days from college football really being played. Jack, we're still waiting to hear if you played for Bear at Kentucky. Namath played for Bear and had a birthday this week. Happy birthday, Joe Willie. Sadly, Jack won't like this. Joe Willie is both the most important, one of the most important people in NFL history and one of the most overrated, all at the same time. Totally not kidding, by the way. I've seen that fight. I believe you. I'm laughing at myself. I won't be doing any fist fighting, but I understand. And I don't plan on being in a bar in Alabama to talk to anybody about it. So, remind us again Friday morning, Rick. Mohawks open up Saturday night in Amsterdam. Good to hear. Guys, thanks for coming in. Rick, John DeLong, Alan, Carlos, Jack Hirsch. Did I say Jack? Good to have you with the show tonight, Jack. Please tune in. Love your comments. Still waiting to hear if you played for Bear, Kentucky or not. I'll ask you again Friday morning. Who else did I miss? Anybody I missed, I apologize. Mac McGrath, thanks for coming in and sharing that radical change to the NCAA. Anybody didn't catch it, watch first half of the show. Guys, we'll be back next week, and we'll be that much closer to real college football, but we'll have stuff to talk about. And we love talking about your comments. We've had a great time tonight. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talks College Football Huddle right here on Northeast Streaming Sports. We'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.